Welcome back, everybody. Jen Shirkus here, and I am sharing this really fun Miss You card, which I think we could probably send to all of our friends right now. I am using one of the new stencils that's part of Simon Says Stamps release today. It is their Love You release. This stencil is called the Boho Circle, and I love the circular shape and all the details in it. I am setting it up on the Wendy Vecchi station. This honestly has to be one of my most favorite recent tools. I love this station. It makes you want to stencil more. The magnets are really nice and strong. You don't have to worry about glue, taping your stencil to your project or using any adhesive or anything. It's just amazing. So I set up the stencil in the lower right hand corner, and then I'm just going to my tried and true rainbow colors. I started with wilted violet, and now I'm working with peacock feathers. Since I'm using regular distress inks and not distress oxides, I really love using blender brushes. They just give you a little bit softer application of the color, and then I also find that they don't get hung up on the detail of the stencil. But when I'm using my distress oxides, I still love my ink blending tool, but for this right here we're going to be using these blender brushes, and I'm using the ones from Tailored Expressions. I just love the colored handles and the white bristles. I just finished up with Twisted Citron Distress ink, and now I'm just going back in a little bit more peacock feathers. You can never have enough teal on a project that I'm creating. And now I'm moving on to Squeezed Lemonade. Now, if you follow me, you know most of the time I use mustard seed, but I really wanted to keep the colors of this really nice and soft. So I used the Squeezed Lemonade, and now I'm going to use a little bit of spiced marmalade. Is anybody else hungry? So I'm adding that spiced marmalade, leaving myself some room to do my final color. And this station is the travel size. It also comes in a larger size, but I've been using this travel size the most. It probably would have been easier if I had the larger one out for this project, but the travel one fits right in my drawer to the right of me, and it just makes it so easy. So the final color I am using is Picked Raspberry, and I'm having a little bit of trouble getting in and getting the curve of this circle colored with the Picked Raspberry, just because I'm dealing with the magnets, and I also am nervous I'm going to go off the edge onto the white cardstock. So I'm going to use a little bit of the Thermoweb purple tape, and I'm basically going to mask off the extra cardstock that is peeking through from the stencil. I just don't want a line of Picked Raspberry on the rest of my card. So now I'm going back in, adding that Picked Raspberry, filling in the rest of the stencil. And then I'm going to gently peel away the Thermoweb purple tape. I'm making sure I don't move the stencil because I want to keep it in place for my next step. So what I'm going to be using next is the textured paste in transparent matte, and this is from Ranger. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I've had a little bit of a problem with my glitter gels and my glitter pastes drying up, and this is not any fault of any company. I'm just not using it fast enough. So I do use this texture paste for many different ways, and I figured why not just use this to make my own glitter paste. So I'm spreading the paste through the stencil with a palette knife, making sure I get it into all the grooves, and then just kind of leveling it off so that it's a nice even height across the whole stencil. And then once I get that done, I'm going to gently peel away the stencil and reveal the magic, which I'm always excited about because I haven't even had a chance to see the beautiful design after ink blending. So you can see I'm just gently peeling that stencil away, And honestly, you could leave this as is. You don't even have to add glitter. Adding this texture paste is just pretty on itself, but I, of course, need to add glitter. You can see I was just wiping the sides, making sure there's no extra paste on the edges. And now I am using my beloved Bucket O Prisma glitter, and I am just adding some glitter to the paste while it is wet. So just sprinkling some on and tapping it off. And look at this, it's so pretty. It looks a little cloudy right now because that paste is still wet, but once it dries, you'll see now, here it is dry, the colors are much bolder and just very vibrant and pretty. So now I'm going to use an outside-in stitched rectangle from Lawn Fawn. I just want to add a little stitching to the edge of my panel. And I'm also going to try out this new to me die. This is a Miss You die from Simon Says Stamp. I love a lot of the sentiment dies that Kathy Zielski is designing because they're nice and clean, they're bold, and a lot of them you can use all year round. So you can see me here, I'm just kind of laying it down on my project to see where I think I'm going to put the sentiment. And I've decided I want to do a little bit of sentiment stacking, just so I have a little bit of dimension on my project. So I'm using some guava cardstock from Lawn Fawn, a really nice 110-pound cardstock. And I'm going to die cut the Miss You part 4 times. I'm using a little Altenew Blossom machine. This I have on my desk at all times. And honestly, I probably do about 90% of my die cutting on this little machine. It's really been life-changing for me to have a mini machine instead of having to get up and down constantly. Not that I'm being lazy, although I am being a little lazy, but partially so that I'm not interrupting my creative process. A lot of the times getting up and down, you kind of lose your flow or lose your idea or the momentum that you're working on your project. So it's just so convenient to have this little machine right on my desk. You can see I'm using another little piece of purple tape from Thermoweb. I kind of hoard this and keep it stuck on my machine until it won't stick anymore. So I use it over and over, and I have multiple pieces that I'm using at a time. I'm just die cutting these sentiments and setting them aside. And then one more to go. I am only going to use the front part of this die. As you saw when I took the die out, it does have a beautiful layer to kind of back the word Miss You, but I'm going to just use the front part on this card. I really want to keep the card open and airy and with lots of white space. So now that I have all of these die cut, I'm going to use my Lawn Fawn glue tube, and I'm going to add just a little bit of glue on the sentiment right on the top. And you don't need a lot of glue, and it doesn't need to be everywhere. And then I just kind of stack my next U on there, and I don't worry if any glue is coming off on the sides or anything like that because it is going to dry clear and it will dry matte. So it's all good, but a little glue goes a long way. And this is a really quick and easy way to stack the sentiments. I always kind of keep them in my hand or my fingertips, just like you can see. And so when I go to line up my next piece, I can kind of wiggle it and move it. Again, because I'm using a wet glue, has some dry, before it dries, it has some move time where I can make sure that they're lining up nicely. So now I'm going to stack the word Miss. Popping out all the extra pieces. Lawn Fawn cardstock is 110-pound cardstock. It's a really, really nice weight. And I actually really use this guava color a lot. It's kind of in between a red and a pink, but it's a really, really pretty color. So now that I have these two words stacked together, The dot for the eye, I am not going to do now. I'm just going to kind of collect them and I'm going to set them in a very special place on my desk so I don't lose them. And I will stack them later and I'll show you kind of how I'm going to do that. So setting those aside. And now I am laying down my letters and feeling like it needs a little something extra. So here I'm using another Kathy Zielske sentiment set from Simon Says Stamp. I love all the small little sentiments on here. There's some sassy ones and some really sweet ones. I decided to stick with a sweet one for today. And I'm going to use some Simon Says Stamp Hot Lips ink. This honestly is one of my favorite ink colors. I haven't used it in a really long time, and I don't know, it just kind of remembered it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love that Hot Lips ink. So I'm stamping out my sweet friend on a little piece of white cardstock, and I'm going to take my scissors and cut it out like word fetty. So I do it real rough just with my scissors. I really don't want it to look perfect like in a paper trimmer. Just cutting it close to the sentiment. And this is just going to look really nice offset of the bold miss you sentiment. So it'll read, miss you, my sweet friend. Now when I die cut the panel out of the outside in stitched rectangles, it made it slightly smaller than an A2 card, than 4¼ by 5½. So I decided that it would look really pretty offset on this sunflower lawn fawn cardstock. So I'm adhering it to that panel. I just added some dot runner on the back of my stenciled panel, and I'm just centering it onto this yellow background. And now I'm going to add a little bit more Lawn Fawn glue tube to adhere the sentiment to the card. Definitely on top of the texture paste with glitter, the wet adhesive will really settle in and hold up very nicely. I'm going to cut 2 little slivers of 3M foam tape to put behind the little sentiment, the little word fetty that we created. And then just to reinforce it, I am going to dab on some glue tube, again, because it's going to be adhered to that glittered stenciled background. I really want to make sure it sticks. I'm going to use some Little Things, Lucy's Little Things sequins. They're actually called Beach Days, but I'm not doing a beachy card for once. I'm going to use some of these sprinkled around the card. So I was going to edit this out of the video, but I think we all have a love-hate relationship with sequins and where to put them on a card and how we come up with where to put them. So I'm keeping this part of the video in so you can kind of see me place the different colors down, move them, change where they're going to go, change the color, and what have you. I figure it's good for us all to see that there's not like this little magic sequin fairy that just comes and sprinkles sequins on our cards for us. Although, wouldn't that be amazing? So, I'm figuring out where the sequins are gonna go. I'm trying not to distract from the design of the stencil, but I did want to add just a little something something, a little bit of sparkle, and I'm going to use Lawn Fawn glue tube to adhere the sequins. Now this part is kind of funny because I got my tweezers out thinking, yeah, I'm going to use tweezers, but honestly, for the most part, I almost always just use my fingers placing tweezers. So you can kind of see me struggling a little bit, getting the sequin to come off of the tweezers and stick to the glue, and the whole time I was doing this in my mind, I was like, why didn't I just stick to my fingers like I normally do? But hey, gotta try things, right? So I'm adding the little sequins. This one right here, I'm actually tucking underneath the little word fetty, my sweet friend. I really like to kind of tuck things and have them go off of layers a little bit, really making them appear to have been randomly sprinkled. So just a few here and there. You don't want to go overboard, but I do love the dimension that it adds to the card and just the added sparkle to this already very sparkly card. This card really makes me think of spring, which today on Cape Cod, which is where I live, I woke up and we had a little teeny tiny dusting of snow. It is early December here, and oh, it's still going to be a long winter, I know, but this card really, really makes me hopeful that spring is right around the corner. Who's with me? So now you can see I'm adding my dot to the eye. Now, sometimes I stack it together, kind of like I did the miss and the U, but sometimes I find it easier to stack it right on the card like I'm doing here. So I'm adding a little bit of glue tube, putting the little dot down, and then adding a little bit more glue tube and putting the next dot down. It is tricky. Sometimes I eliminate this completely and use a sequin in its place or maybe a little heart, but I'm in it to win it on this one. So I am just adding teeny tiny glue. You do not need a lot. It'll actually be easier for you to not have a lot to get that paper to stick. And I'm just using my tweezers to rub off any extra glue that maybe came off on the edges. It is going to dry matte, but I just wanted to not have an excessive amount. No, an excessive amount. You get what I'm saying. One of my sequins smeared in the midst of doing this, so I just adhered that, and there we go. We have this fun little sparkly Miss You card. We made our very own glitter paste, so with supplies that you might already have on hand, and we're now wishing it a spring. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. Definitely check out the description of this video. I've listed all of the supplies that I have used. Also, be sure to check out that new release from Simon Says Stamp. It's chocked full of goodies, and that's an official Janabler alert. Have a great day, guys. Bye.